Welcome to another edition of the Dakotan's Election Central, where we are comprehensively covering the 2024 North Dakota election cycle. You can go to mydakotan.com, click election cycle, and learn all about it. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Katrina Christiansen, who is a candidate for the United States Senate. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I've watched quite a few of these, so
Uh-oh.
it's nice to have my turn.
You
No,
know
no,
all
I
of
think
our
it's
secrets
good.
now.
I think it's great. You've had local candidates and you've had statewides and federals. I think it's really good. It's great for our
Absolutely.
voters.
Well, appreciate it. As we begin here, let's just start it off by learning more about you. So, who is Katrina?
Oh, thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Katrina Christiansen, and I'm running to represent North Dakota in the United States Senate. I live in Jamestown. I've been here for 13 years. I raise my family with my husband, Max. We have a 15-year-old, Henry. We have a 12-year-old, Vivian. And then the baby is Johannes, and he goes by Hansi. I am an agricultural engineer by training. I have my PhD from Iowa State. I did my undergrad at the University of Nebraska Lincoln and my master's there as well. I have experience working in the ethanol industry. I was a plant engineer at a 60 million gallon a year plant. I also had the opportunity to work for Cargill here in North Dakota at the Spiritwood plant, which was the world's largest malting facility while I worked there. And I had a couple of opportunities to develop patents for them in terms of ag processing. And then I worked for a startup in Fargo called Intelligent Malt, where we designed craft malting equipment for growers or brewers who wanted to integrate their supply chain. And unfortunately, I was laid off from Cargill, but that got me into the job at Intelligent Malt. But like most small businesses or startups, they struggle. And I was laid off in 2019. So now I actually teach engineering at the University of Jamestown. I love it. I love teaching students how to think about problem solving. And, it's exciting to work with our youth and the future problem solvers. So that's just a little bit about me. My part-time job though is running for office.
Absolutely. Well, first off, talk about teaching. That's got to be an interesting dynamic in the current day and age that we live in, especially going from private or business sector, and even private sector, working in the small businesses and stuff like that. Um, what kind of transition was that like?
Well, I think for this working with the students, it wasn't as hard. I've had interns that I've worked with in industry, and so I wasn't so disconnected.
Okay.
But I think the thing that was probably more challenging was going from that real life application of problem solving where you have your head in the game, hands on the
Mhm.
equipment, you're trying to troubleshoot or fix things and improve things, to teaching somebody how to do that. And a lot of my colleagues whom I adore don't have the same sort of real world experience that I have. And
Right.
so the way that we approach education is also different, because I think, oh, well, you need to have this skill. You need to be able to figure out why this distillation column isn't working or something like that. Those skills are different than you need to be able to figure out a thermocycle and all of the steps associated with that. That's very theoretical. So
Right.
that's been really interesting. And I teach senior design and I love that. I can remember all of the senior projects that we've had. So I had the opportunity to start teaching when COVID happened and we had to go online. But we were really fortunate in that we were able to still deliver finished products that semester. So it's been exciting and fun. I have a lot of fun with my students. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're in this engineering field. What prompted you to get into politics?
oh, well, I think they're really related.
Okay.
Um, in that I'm a problem solver.
Right.
I actually feel like we currently don't have the representation that we need, whether that's
Mhm.
to protect our rural hospitals or lower prescription drug prices so that people can afford them, or make sure that our farmers don't have to gamble when it comes to choosing a crop insurance program. I really think that North Dakotans want somebody who's willing to take on those challenges and champion them. And we don't have that right now. And that's ultimately why I got into politics is I didn't see anyone stepping up to do the follow through
Right.
with addressing issues in our state.
Yeah, absolutely. When were you first kind of like interested? I know that you ran in last race versus John Hoven, but when was it like, all right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do something more than just be a voter, more than just be involved in some of the local politics? When was that for you?
That was in October of 2021. I
And
can
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So talk about
I
that.
know what happened. I called Senator Hofan's office and I was upset that he wasn't supporting the debt ceiling increase and he wasn't supporting a continuing resolution to keep the government open. And I know that you've talked to other guests on the show about the inconsistent ability of our elected officials to do the work that they need to do and keep the government running. And my concern was really about those people in the state of North Dakota, over 100,000 Social Security recipients that depend on receiving their Social Security to pay for bills, to pay for food, to pay for gas. And when I called his office, there was not an understanding of what it's like to live
Yeah,
paycheck to paycheck. And without that vision, without understanding how important it is that we keep our government, the government by the people, for the people, working, it was just astounding to me. And then once I got in, I love it. I love meeting the people across the state. One of my staffers asked me, "What do you like about North Dakota?" And I grew up in a small town, Pender, Nebraska, 1,200 people. And I've had the opportunity, I'm so lucky to travel around the state and meet so many people. It's like living in a small town.
right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love it.
So you mentioned the running before, and it's interesting because North Dakota, if you look at it historically, we're we've been a blue state for a long time, and it's not until really recent history that some things have changed and it has become a red dominated state. Um, and so I think the last person that had a foothold at the state level, in one of our federal seats, was Heidi Heitkamp,
Mhm.
and she lost in 2018, and then since then it's been red, and that's not a long time. Because we live in the internet age. That's ancient history, but really that's just 6 years ago, right? That's not
Right.
that long ago.
Yep.
Um, what do you feel like it takes for the Democrats to get back on that track where they have that voice at the state and federal level?
So that's a great point. I really appreciate you making that. We had 3 federally elected, Democrats up until 2010, and then, of course, Senator Heitkamp won the seat in 2012, but unfortunately lost it in 2018, and I have had the opportunity over the since from my last race to kind of figure out what can we fix? How can
Right,
we do better? How can we win? And so we put those pieces that we thought were missing and we brought them in. So I have a really talented staff and experienced staff that has run races before. My campaign manager's on his 13th. This is his 13th campaign. And I have somebody who used to work for Senator Heitkamp doing my political stuff. We have a senior political advisor who was the former executive director of the DSCC, that was the campaign manager for 7 winning Senate races in Nebraska, South Dakota, and Arkansas. So kind of similar um, in the sense of the politics shifting. And so I truly believe, and this is why I'm in this race, that I can win because we know we just need to get our message out there. We know that if you, people meet me, they like me, they trust me. And those are 2 really important things when a voter goes into a to vote. Do they know you? Do they trust you? And do they like you? And so that's what we had when we had Senator Dorgan, we had Senator Conrad, Representative Pomeroy, and Senator Heitkamp. It's answering that question. and thinking, yeah, I know Katrina. I know she's a problem solver. I know she's a working mom. She knows what it's like to pay the mortgage and pay for car insurance and all of those things. Like, I get it, and I want to help people. And if they know that and they can believe that, then I can win. And so just bringing in that experience, raising the money to get my message out there, and then doing the really hard work of meeting people. If you don't mind, I'd like to tell you this story.
Yeah.
When my campaign manager came for the first time to North Dakota, he told me, Katrina, you're going to have to meet as many people as possible to win this race. And so we were driving from Grand Forks to Minot, and we stopped in Michigan, North Dakota. And we were trying to get gas. And he had a card from DC, and the pump wasn't working. We couldn't figure out what was going on. And this guy pulls up in an old truck, and he's in duck hunting gear, and he says, oh, they're not open today. It won't work. And so I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I need to impress my campaign manager. I walk over to the guy and I introduce myself. I say, I'm Katrina Christiansen. I'm running for US Senate. And he says, what party? And I say, a Democrat. And he throws up his arms and he sticks his hands in his pocket and he's, nah. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? But I just start to talk to him about career politicians not getting things done, career politicians representing special interests. And then I asked him what he did, and he's a farmer, and I'm an ag engineer, so we were able to talk. And he suggested I run for a different office first to try to get my feet wet, and I said, well, I'm not a career politician. I'm a problem solver. And he looked at me like, oh. Anyway, by the end of the conversation, he shook my hand, he wished me luck. And I joke that I have a couple votes there in Michigan.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
it's just doing that sort of hard work. That's what Democrats have to do. That's what we're going to have to do.
So along those lines, and you kind of mentioned it, what inspired you to get into politics, do you feel like with our current legislatures that there is a disconnect going on right now between the people and our politicians that are in DC?
Oh, yeah. I absolutely agree. I've talked to independents, I've talked to Republicans, and they feel like their vote's been sold. They feel like the person that they sent to represent their interests isn't doing that. I've talked to a rancher that went out to Washington, D.C., and he expressed his frustration about having to go all the way to D.C. to try to get his representatives to listen to him about his concerns. And that frustration, that's real. And we saw that in our internal polling. They're frustrated.
That's incredible. So,
Yeah.
so let's take a look at the Republican Party, though. All right. We'll take a look at the Republican Party. We don't want to make it about that, obviously, for this interview. But what I want to focus on is the I don't know, the confusion that's going on, the messiness that's going on right now, or maybe it's just part of what politics is and natural things that happen at a state level with um, Burgum not running for a third term. You got a lot of changeover that's happening, and even within the Republican Party of the change in chairs and stuff like that. You can throw it back to last convention, and it was well documented that there was some infighting that was happening at their last endorsing convention. Is this this infighting that's happening in the Republican Party? Is this stuff that's going on, these changing of seats? Is this the time for Democrats to be able to finally get that foothold back at the state level, or is this just natural things?
I think it's absolutely a time that Democrats need to take advantage of. I think that there is the reason I think you see so much infighting is because they're not serving the people. They're serving self-interests. And so when you are working for those who you represent, I think you don't have these problems. And what we're seeing now is a lot of posturing.
Mhm.
Um, and that posturing is for power. It's not for problem solving. And so I guess when I spend a lot of time focused on doing the work that I need to do to get my message out there, tell my story about being a working mom and,
Yeah,
you know, living the American dream and having a lot of luck. Like it shouldn't be left up to luck.
right.
I do see what's happening in the Republican Party, and I can't help but think it's because of self-interest.
Very good. So I'm excited to talk about your platform and more along those lines. We're going to transition, but we're going to go to one of my most favorite part of the interviews in recent history, and that's the rapid fire questions.
Oh,
So,
okay.
are you down for some rapid fire questions?
We're gonna try it. Let's do this. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We make them as hard as we can get them. So, here we go. Just tell us which ones you prefer, road trip or plane ride.
Road trip.
You had to do a lot of those recently, and you still sticking
Yeah,
with
no,
road trip.
and I love my minivan. I didn't own one before, I was in a car crash, had to get a new car, and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to buy a minivan." I love it. Love it.
that's
So,
awesome. Pizza or burgers?
oh, burger.
Burger, okay. Winter sports or summer sports? Thinking Olympics.
Oh, summer.
Text message or phone call?
Are you trying to date me here? Like age wise? I honestly, my husband's 5 years older than me, and
Yeah.
it's so funny because he's always like, "Can't you just call me?" So texting.
Texting. All right, here's another one on those same lines then. Online shopping or in-person shopping?
Online. I live in
Okay.
North Dakota.
Yeah, you do.
Online.
Online shopping. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Formal attire or casual attire?
Formal.
This is an important one coming up. Android or iPhone? I feel like you could gain votes by this answer.
Well, it's Android.
Oh, it's gotta
Oh,
be
can I tell you a secret? My
yeah,
staff all have iPhones. They hate the fact that I have
you destroy every group text. You alone make them all green. My,
Yeah,
my,
that's
my.
so funny. My campaign manager is gonna love that you said that.
That's hilarious.
Uh,
Pancakes or waffles?
Oh, pancakes. I make killer pancakes.
And then in with two more. If you could go back in history or even current day and have dinner with anybody, who would it be?
My grandpa Christiansen. I never met him.
Okay, that's a very good answer. That's very different than the other ones. That's really neat. Keep it in the family. And then the last rapid fire question, what is your favorite thing about North Dakota?
Oh, that my kids are happy here.
Okay, that's good. End it with family stuff. I think that's awesome.
No, they
Shows
they
you
are they are. They're it's a really wonderful thing. They love their community and they have the things they need.
absolutely. So switching it back to some more probably more important things in the rapid fire questions. What are the key issues that you are really trying to hammer home on your campaign this year?
Well, I think so. We've already talked about the part where I'm not a Republican.
Right.
And so one of the main things that, like I was telling about that story in Michigan, I'm not worried about running for US Senate in a red state because I'm running as a North Dakotan. And I think when people meet me and they talk to me, that they understand that I really want them to have better lives,
Right.
better opportunities, more diverse opportunities. And I think, whether that's dealing with affordable healthcare, access to healthcare. I was just on the phone with a doctor this morning that's worked in Hettinger, and their hospital there has rebuilt Hettinger. He was explaining to me that 14 doctors service 26,000 patients in that part of the state. They're serving eastern Montana and northwestern South Dakota. It's a really important community, and so it's protecting those rural hospitals. That's really important. I think it's also important that we address the price of prescription drugs. I don't know how many people I have talked to for whom that's an issue. How many people do you know that have been like, whoa, this costs me so much money and I need it?
Right. Right.
And so that piece that we deal with every day as being North Dakotans, we need to address those things. And then, of course, there are the things in the Farm Bill that we need to address, whether that's the indemnification programs and the CRP programs need to be expanded and increasing the value of those. There are lots of things that we can do that impact North Dakotans and our economies and just our ability to live good lives that aren't being addressed. And so making sure that we have a robust farm bill is really important. And then, of course, I think growing our economy here, we really haven't brought on board innovative processes or industries that we really could. I'm not buying into the Bitcoin thing. I think that it's not sustainable in terms
Yep.
of economic opportunity. And so, what are those real economic opportunities that we can bring to the state to make our communities whole? That's
Right.
important to me.
Yeah, that's a interesting question, and one hopefully we find an answer to. Obviously, you're described as a critical thinker, and that's something that's needed in Washington,
Thank
obviously.
you.
Um, but there's some things that our country's facing, rising debt, involved, and maybe it's for better or maybe it's for worse, but we're involved a lot at the world stage, and we're America, so naturally. And then it seems like there's a growing bipartisan concern for the border and what's going on there. What are some of the solutions that you have considered or that you have seen that you are a fan of for some of these issues?
So I think, one of the things about being as old as I am is I do remember the Clinton presidency and having a
Mhm.
surplus. I am so old that I actually got a surplus check from one of the Bush terms in the early 2000s.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we used to be able to balance the budget so well that we actually were giving surpluses back to taxpayers. And I think that part of the reason why we're unable to do that right now is because of the rancor in DC, the inability of people that have been elected to work together. I've talked about this before. The best bills in our history of a nation have had bipartisan support.
Right.
And I think when we look at that data, we need to go, oh, well, then we need to work together to address these issues. And
Mhm.
you brought up the border. We all want a secure border. We
Right.
all want to make sure that fentanyl is not getting in our communities. We all want to make sure that people that are coming into our country are doing so legally and they've been vetted. We also want to make sure that we have a humane response to the migration crisis in the Western Hemisphere. And so I think, we have this opportunity. It seems like it was forever ago to pass a border bill, comprehensive. It would have given a lot of resources to our border patrol so that they would have more money to do things. I don't know if you saw the story, but there are these fentanyl detection pieces of equipment that Border
Okay.
Patrol has been given, but Congress hasn't given them the money to install them.
Wow.
You know, I'm I'm an engineer. You have to calibrate that stuff. You have to teach
Right.
people how to use it. This is really important. We have people dying from fentanyl overdoses. And so I think that border bill that Senator Kramer didn't support would have been a step. It was a bipartisan bill. History
Right.
tells me it would have been really successful and I would have voted for it. So I think, to answer the debt question, it's going to take a bipartisan effort. And we've done it before and we can do it again. The border bill, again, bipartisan effort.
Yeah. So, and that's an interesting topic because and you mentioned that going into the when you went to the education sector, it was different. You were having to work across with different people with different point of views. They've been in education from a different perspective, and so you're going to have to do that in Congress as well, no doubt. Working across the aisles, working inside your party. But I think the big question is what do we do where so that bipartisan issues can get passed again? Because right
I
now,
think we have
it
it's a
doesn't
great
happen.
question. I
Mhm.
I I mean, what's continuing resolution are we on right now? I think I made a joke that it was like 78.
Yeah.
I'm very frustrated by the fact that we have people who are paid. They
Mhm.
are elected and they are paid to make the government run and keep it
Right.
running and keep it so that we're not worrying about it every night and every morning when we check the news. Like, is the government going to shut down? Is my vacation to Washington, D.C. or this national park going to be ruined because the government shut down? I think part of the reason that Democrats have an opportunity to win in North Dakota this cycle, and hopefully in the future, is because our leaders aren't willing to do that really hard work of making amendments to bills they don't like, or
Mhm.
being seen as bipartisan because, like you had been talking about earlier, party politics are so poisonous that you can't, that
Right.
you would be primaried out. And I think in America, one of the things that makes us special, and in North Dakota, is like we come together to get things done. Like that's, I have examples in my community, our PTOs, whomever. Like you can't do it alone. So you gotta ask the other side to come along.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you a maybe more difficult question, but
Oh,
it won't be difficult for you, but maybe it'll be just difficult for me to ask. Um, you're a pro-choice candidate.
yep.
Um, and what do you say? Because I feel like this is probably an issue that a lot of North Dakotans um, look into. It's not one that they're just like, oh, whatever. It's something that they actually take time to look at and they consider. So, what do you say to those that are on the fence? Maybe they like your point of view, the way that you come in, and how you would approach Washington D.C. But this is kind of one of those make or break issues for them. How do you approach that? What's your message to those people?
Well, I think one, we all need to understand that we have different bodies, we have different experiences, and I think if we can just take a minute to recognize everybody as a person and that we all
Mhm,
can't make the same choices, that helps. But I think that it's really important to look at, since the Dobbs decision, and since there have been some states that have enacted very strict abortion laws, women's health has become a very serious issue. I my dad was diagnosed with cancer last April,
mm,
and and this is related. It was very shocking. It
yeah,
was during one of the blizzards. I couldn't drive down to see him, and my mom is scared, and my siblings, my brother lives in Duluth, and my sister lives in Denver, and it was just like this jarring like experience.
right,
And um, and then this last summer, there was a story about a woman in Oklahoma who had um, a pregnancy that's a molar pregnancy. It's like a pregnancy, but it's actually cancerous tissues. And she was unable to get those cancer cells removed because of Oklahoma's abortion laws. And
okay,
she had to drive all the way with her husband to Kansas.
mhm,
And the doctors were very concerned that the because that cancer was growing so quickly that she would rupture and could bleed out before they got to Kansas. And so it's, and I could go on with all of the stories across the nation for women who have been in these really terrible situations, and they've just been unfortunate to be in a state where the laws no longer protect them from these really terrible things. And so I think that's what I would tell them, is that those the the way that the law was before, those women could have received the emergency care that they needed. I can't even imagine. Like I can't imagine what it would have been like to be told, "No, we're not gonna remove this cancerous tissue. We can't. You
yeah,
need to drive to another state." Like,
right,
that's not America, and so that's kind of where, we need to have compassion. We need to understand that life's messy, the world is messy. People get into, early labor, and they need really serious care immediately, and that's the thing that we need to, because it's happening to women across the state that, or the country. They don't have access to that care
right.
anymore.
So, and those examples are health issues which go beyond just the pregnancy not being wanted. Are you pro-choice for when it's just a pregnancy that maybe it was you can always go to a extreme case, right? And I know that they're common. I'm not trying to diminish those cases,
Yeah.
but you can go to, well, what if they were raped or something like that, and that becomes an extreme case. But I'm just talking about it's a couple that they pregnant and they decide, nope, we don't want this, or we don't. Are you for? Is that still some area that you're a pro choice,
I
or are there limits?
I think, of course, there are limits, and the American Medical Association has outlined what those are, and I think it's really important. Like I said before, we're all people. We all have different things that we're going through, whether or not we can afford it. I think my opponent has very extreme views on abortion, um, in the sense that it should be very limited, if at
Mhm.
all.
Yeah,
And I think that we have this conversation a lot, uh, because it's something that people care about.
right.
I want to make sure that kids that are born have access to healthcare. I want to make sure that they don't ever have to worry about getting insulin if they're type 1 diabetic. I don't
Yeah,
like, in Stutzman County, we don't even have enough childcare for the half the kids in our community. We've only got enough childcare for a third of them. And, we struggle to get resources into our school. We don't want to give them, school lunches. It's, it's really that juxtaposition for me is hard to look away from. Like, how can you be so hard on somebody, judging them, when you're unwilling to do the very hard work of helping them do this,
yeah,
which is to have childcare available, which is to make healthcare affordable. And so that juxtaposition is real, and some people are fortunate, and they can they can walk through life and make um, those decisions, and society might judge them less than somebody who doesn't have the same opportunities. And so I think, um, you know, it's just important to love people for who they are and what they've got.
So, switching gears a little bit, um, our country was founded with an understanding of the importance of religion. All right. And it includes references to God in the Declaration of Independence. Do you think it is important to have that godly influence on decisions that are made in regards to our country and that affect North Dakota?
I think that the freedom to practice your own religion is obviously something that separates the United States of America from many other countries,
Right.
where your ability to limit or practice a religion is limited. Um,
Mhm.
you may end up being mm, prejudiced against, depending on where you are. You might be a minority religion. It might actually be against the law for you to practice. And we live in a country where that's not the case, and we live in a state where that's not the case. And I actually was talking to a friend. His name is Pastor Bob, and we were talking about this idea of fear.
Mhm.
And he said to me, "Only pure love can cast out fear." And that's from the Bible,
Yep.
but it stayed with me. And
Right.
so I think, to your point, like the fear of losing access to your religion in the United States of America, somebody's somebody's driving that. But the thing that's going to displace that is pure love. So love for your country, love
Yeah.
for your neighbors.
Right. Absolutely. Very good. So let's get back to focusing on Katrina. Why should someone vote for you this election cycle?
Oh, because I'm tenacious. I will get stuff done. I think I have 3 patents. I've been able to find work after losing my job. I have 3 kids. I really have a passion for solving problems, and I want to talk about like why I'm tenacious.
Yeah.
And I'm tenacious because I've had to live the American dream. So I grew up really poor. My dad and his brother lost the farm. It wasn't their fault. My grandpa died, and there was an operating bill, and all of these things that just had to be paid for. And that was it. And he had a house, and he had kids, and he had to stay in this area, and he struggled to find employment. It was the 80s. It was hard to watch my dad struggle to find work and then have inconsistent work. And then my mom be stressed out about raising 4 kids,
Yeah.
and how are we going to pay for everything and feed them and do all these things. And I was really lucky that there were bipartisan bills passed that, made food stamps available, made free and reduced lunch available, made Head Start. I was able to go to preschool because of Head Start. When I was in high school, I went to a federally sponsored upward bound math and science program that showed me like, oh, this is what I need to do to be successful in college. And of course I had a lot of luck. I had people who were helping me, and um, you know, it shouldn't take luck to get into the middle class. And
Right.
that's why I'm here. And those programs help me. And I think we can develop solutions. Some of them can be market based, that can help people be their best selves. And that's why I'm doing this, is because I know what it's like to struggle, and I know how much hard work it takes. And sometimes we just need a little bit of help, like I was saying before, to really unlock all of our potential. And that's me. I'm unlocked potential.
So if you were to get elected, you know how they always talk about a president's first 100 days in office. And I know, and I've said it before on the podcast that we've done, we understand that your position is a lot different than that presidential position. But there's still some immediate goals that you may have. What are some of those goals that you would have coming out of the gate that you would want to fight for, or some things that you would feel need to be done right away?
So I think we need to pass a farm bill. I mean, rumor has it that they're not going to do it. People don't like things about the 2018 Farm Bill, and that's really important. North Dakota's second largest economy is the Farm Bill. We need to address the consolidation of farmland. We need to reevaluate how do we support value-added processing in the state, and we need to make sure that Americans own American farmland. And we are shaping our farming future, not China. And so I think that Farm Bill needs to address that. So that's one. I also think that dealing with the cost and access of healthcare is at the top of everyone's list of things that they do. I think
Mhm.
it's just, like I said, my dad, he's lucky. He's on Medicare, but he also has the supplemental and the Part B and all of those things that make his cancer treatment something that's not destroying my parents financially. And so how do we have robust reform when it comes to medical care, prescription drug care? So addressing those things that's really important. So those are the two big things.
Yep,
The healthcare industry is like an $4 billion industry or something like that. It's insane.
that
And it
is.
shouldn't be that way. With
Yeah.
all the innovation we have, it shouldn't be that way.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. And it's neat that the farm bill and farmers are a focus, but it'd be natural because that's kind of your background.
Yes, I do gravitate towards that. I really like plants. So
Absolutely. So, if th- sorry, thank you for coming on this episode today. And if someone wants to support you or find out more about you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
well, I really appreciate the opportunity. It was actually a lot of fun. It flew by. They could go to Katrina, Katrina, for USSenate.com. And I also have Facebook and Instagram and those sorts of things. And hopefully those people I'll meet on the trail. So
Absolutely. Very good. Well, again, thank you.
thank you.
This has been another episode of the Dakotans Election Central, where we are comprehensively covering the 2024 North Dakota election cycle. I'm Jonathan Starr. Be sure to go to mydakotan.com, click Election Central. There you'll see a database of candidates. You can watch interviews just like the one you just watched and learn more about it. Follow us on Facebook, like and subscribe on YouTube, become part of the Dakotan community. Thank you for watching this episode, and have a great day.